Wow, everybody's quiet now. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's meeting of the DNC Credentials Committee. We are live streaming these proceedings on the DNC YouTube channel, and the meeting will also be transcribed by our court reporter for our official record. I hereby call this meeting of the Credentials Committee to order. My name is Ryan Ramirez. I'm the co-chair of the Credentials Committee, and I am joined by my co-chair, the illustrious Congresswoman Nakima Williams. Congresswoman?
Thank you, Ryan, and hello, everyone, returning members, new members. I'm new to this committee, not new to the DNC. Some of you I've known since I was a young Democrat, so happy to be with you today and to get the business underway. So with that, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda is the determination of a quorum, and I'll ask our parliamentarian, Helen McFadden, to call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Mr. Albiz, Mr. Atkins, Ms. Campbell, Mr. Colbum. Ms. Carrington has given her proxy to Judy Mount. Ms. Cruz has given her proxy to Jay Jacobs. Mr. Dean. Mr. Dignan. Ms. Gray. Ms. Guillamard. Okay. Do I have that wrong? Should it be Mr. Guillamard? Okay. Ms. Huggins? Mr. Hughes? Mr.
Present.
Mr. Jacobs? Here. Mr. Kaminsky? Here. Mr. Kenyatta?
Here.
Ms. Crovey? Here. Ms. Leong Hong? Ms. Lucas? Present. Mr. Mallory? Ms. Martin has given her proxy to Matt Hughes. Ms. Martinez-Roman? Yes. Ms. Matos? Yes. Ms. McDivitt-Pugh? Here. Mr. Middleton has given his proxy to Ms. Williams. Judy Mount? Here. Ms. Nicosia, excuse me, apologize. Mr. Newton, or Ms. Newton, I'm sorry.
I'm present.
Yeah. Mr. Owen? Here. Mr. Owens? Ms. Pelosi? Oh, I'm sorry. She has given a proxy to Mr. Ramirez. Mr. Reed? Mr. Remaker? Mr. Reyes? Here. Ms. Roebuck? Here. Ms. Rogansey? Ms. Rollins? Present. Ms. Ruiz? Present. Ms. Sushi? Ms. Taylor? Mr. Taylor, I'm sorry. Mr. Thomas?
Present.
Mr. Turbin? Ms. Vasquez? Ms. Vickers? Here. Mr. Walters? Mr. White? You certainly have an excess of 19.
Well,
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Helen. We do have a quorum. Per our charter and bylaws, the quorum is constituted by 40% or 19 credentials committee members present in person or by proxy. Before we get underway, I want to recognize the team who supports this committee because they do a lot, y'all. In addition to Helen, we're joined by staff from the Office of the Secretary and Party Affairs and DNC Council, Andy Levian. Thank you, oh, we have more people here, but your name's not listed. They didn't even list their names, y'all, but we have to make sure that we recognize additional staff that support the work of this committee. Sham, I don't know why you are acting like you're not here, but thank you for everything that you do to support this committee. And Will Alexander, thank you. We cannot do work without staff. As someone who has ran a state party, I know that we get elected to positions, but we can't do any of this work without staff. So thank you all.
members, welcome to the first hearing of this iteration of the Credentials Committee. And it is a large committee, let me tell you that. One thing I'd like to remind folks, since this is our first meeting in person, is just when you speak, do remember to push the mic and turn the mic on. My co-chair and I were sorry to miss the meeting we had in Los Angeles, and I would like to extend our thanks to Mr. Middleton of South Carolina and the staff for helping facilitate that briefing. It's great to see everybody today. We have a lot of returning new faces here. I want to start off by thanking all of you for stepping up to be good Democrats and serve on this committee. Thank you for your service. We are excited to get the opportunity to work with such an experienced group of people throughout this upcoming cycle. I also want to recognize that we share the important responsibility of considering challenges to the seating of members. As we begin our work with this new committee, our mission is to manage these discussions and processes with fairness and clarity. One thing I'd also like to remind us of is Ms. Lottie in the Resolutions Committee really reminded us all to maintain our decorum, and let's make sure we all treat each other with respect even when we disagree. To be recognized during this meeting, please stand your table tent vertically. Myself and the co-chair, we will recognize you, and we will do our best to try to keep tabs on who raised their credentials in order to be recognized.
Again, thank you all for stepping up to serve. This is the behind-the-scenes work that we have to do to keep our state parties moving forward, to keep our DNC moving forward so that we can do the important work of electing Democrats. Our mandate on this committee is to make determinations regarding the seating of DNC members in accordance with our charter and bylaws. And y'all, this work requires a careful adherence to the values of fairness, consistency, and equity as we deliberate. To reflect the words of our chairman, I'd ask that you all keep that as your North Star as we go about our work. With that, I'll turn it over to DNC General Counsel Andy Levian to walk us through the hearing process that we'll use today.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Parties and members of the committee, the DNC's bylaws vest this committee with the authority to determine the validity of the credentials of those elected to the DNC. When deciding any challenge, the committee must provide each party a reasonable opportunity to be heard and may give an opportunity for the submission of briefs and oral argument. The Credentials Committee's rules of procedure govern the conduct of committee business. A copy of the rules are in your folder. The rules provide that they should be interpreted so as to promote the fair, expedient, and efficient conduct of the committee. The committee's rules provide that after consideration of a challenge by the state party and an appeal to the state party's decision, the co-chairs may schedule an open and public hearing on the specific factual and legal matters in dispute. The hearing may be conducted by a hearing officer or by the Credentials Committee itself. When hearings are conducted by the committee, as will be the case here today, the co-chairs and the committee assume all the authority granted to a hearing officer by the committee's rules. As such, this committee has all powers necessary to conduct the hearing in such a manner so as to secure the just, speedy, and inexpensive determination of the challenge. Additionally, the co-chairs may take such actions as may be necessary to carry out the committee's rules or to facilitate the effective operation of the committee. The committee has the authority to receive all competent evidence relevant to the specific matters at issue and to assign the appropriate weight to such evidence. As such, the co-chairs have provided the parties with the opportunity to submit written briefs and documentary evidence to the committee for its consideration. This material was distributed to each member last week. The co-chairs also informed the parties that they have been allotted 15 minutes each to present oral testimony and argument for the committee's consideration. The co-chairs have not narrowed the issues that may be raised during the presentations. However, since only members of the committee may propose motions, the committee will not grant or deny dispositive procedural requests during the parties' presentations. Rather, if either party requests committee action that could dispose of the challenge or substantively affect the results of the challenge, such action will only be debated if a motion is made by a member of the committee after both presentations have been completed. As the parties each have only 15 minutes to present, please hold all questions and comments until after both presentations. After the parties have made their presentations, the committee may engage in up to 30 minutes of discussion and debate, during which time members may address questions to either party's representatives. Following debate, the co-chairs will recognize a committee member for the purpose of offering a resolution disposing of the challenge, which may be debated for up to 20 minutes, split evenly between proponents and opponents. At the conclusion of the debate, the resolution will be put to a vote. A majority vote is required to adopt a resolution disposing of the challenge. In the event the first proposed resolution is not adopted, the co-chairs will continue to recognize committee members for the purpose of offering resolutions disposing of the challenge until the challenge is disposed of. Thank you in advance for your work today. Sean will now provide an overview of the challenge for you.
Thank you, Andy. The challenge to Alabama's Democratic National Committee members was first filed on September 6, 2024. The challenge was to the mail ballot elections of Donna Foster, Joe M. Reed, and Charlie Staton as Alabama's 3 DNC members in the summer of 2024. The challengers are 2020 to 2024 DNC members Caroline Self and Josh Coleman, who were represented by State Committee member Ralph Young. After the challengers raised concerns about the summer 2024 mail ballot elections, and after the state party determined that under the DNC's charter and bylaws, its DNC member seats were vacant as of the last day of the 2024 Democratic National Convention, the state party used a procedure in its bylaws that allows its executive committee to fill vacant DNC member seats. The executive committee then selected the challenged parties, Ms. Foster, Mr. Reed, and Mr. Staton, in October 2024, and the challengers filed an addendum to their challenge incorporating the October conduct. In January 2025, following the challengers' objections to the seating of the challenged parties for the winter DNC meeting, this committee considered the parties' filings and ultimately recommended the seating of the challenged parties on a temporary basis for the meeting, with the understanding that the state party intended to hold an election to permanently fill the seats at a state committee meeting in April 2025. In addition to recommending the temporary seating, members of this committee engaged in a thoughtful discussion about the key procedural safeguards they would like to see the state party undertake during its April 2025 elections. The safeguards, which included collecting accurate contact information, providing adequate notice, and outlining clear voting instructions, were not hard and fast requirements, but they were recommendations to ensure that the state party could implement a fair and transparent election process, with an outcome that would then hopefully be acceptable to the challengers and challenged parties. The state party did hold its elections for permanent DNC members in April 2025. The voting method was a standing vote. The result from those elections are as follows. For committeewoman, challenged party Donna Foster prevailed with 73 votes to challenger Caroline Self's 71, a margin of 2 votes. For committeeman, challenged party Charlie Staton prevailed with 97 votes compared to Josh Raby's 42, a margin of 55 votes. And for committee person, challenged party Joe M. Reed prevailed with 84 votes compared to challenger Josh Coleman's 59, a margin of 25 votes. Following the April 2025 elections, the committee received an appeal from the challengers arguing that there were defects with these elections and that they should be invalidated. The state party submitted a response defending the conduct of the election. We'll first walk through the committee's recommendations for the elections and how each party believes these recommendations were or were not abided by. The first recommendation was that the SDEC compile a list of each SDEC member's most current contact information no later than 14 days before notice of the next SDEC meeting and use that contact information to provide each and every member notice of the DNC member election. The challengers argue that this recommendation was not abided by because there were a large number of SDEC vacancies that they allege were not properly noticed. These vacancies were filled at the April meeting before the DNC member vote took place. The challengers do not allege any issues with the list besides the vacancies. For example, they do not allege that members of the SDEC did not receive notice of the DNC member elections. The next set of recommendations were that 1, the SDEC provide notice to the public of the DNC member election at least 30 days before the election, and 2, the SDEC provide clear instructions for what the steps are to qualify as a candidate. These recommendations appear to have been abided by. The SDEC published notice of the election on its website on March 14th and sent both mail and email notices to its members. It provided instructions on how to qualify for the election on its website as well. 20 candidates qualified and participated in the election for the 3 DNC member seats. The next recommendation was for the SDEC to develop a process to ensure that only current members of the SDEC could vote in the election through a transparent and organized credentialing process. The challengers allege that the credentialing process failed because the number of votes rose over the course of the DNC member elections from 130 votes counted during the first committeewoman election up to 148 votes cast during the third election for committee person. The challengers argue that these additional votes are unexplained and cast doubt on whether only credentialed SDEC members were voting. The state party responds that, quote, the SDEC staff, assisted by volunteers, including several Democratic county chairs, conducted a rigorous credentialing process. Each member was required not only to sign in, but also to provide photographic identification before being provided with voting credentials for the meeting. It is worth noting that our long-standing, well-respected, and well-known member, Attorney Fred Gray Jr., was denied admission until his photographic identification could be retrieved from his vehicle. The meeting hall was arranged so that a roped-off seating area was provided for credentialed SDEC members. County party chairs were stationed at the entrance to the roped-off areas to ensure that only credentialed members were admitted, end quote. The next recommendation was that the state party appoint an election judge at the time the meeting was noticed to administer an impartial election. The election judge should not be a candidate and should be an impartial Alabama Democrat in good standing who has not endorsed a DNC candidate and would not be voting in the DNC member election. The state party appears to have made efforts to abide by this recommendation, though it did not entirely succeed. It did appoint an election judge, Angela Starr, but she was not announced until the meeting right before the voting began. Ms. Starr is a municipal judge and was not an SDEC member, so she could not vote in the election. The challengers take issue with the fact that Judge Starr was not appointed until the meeting and allege that she was not impartial because she is a member of the Alabama Democratic Conference, the organization run by Dr. Joe Reed, challenged party Joe M. Reed's father, and because she works in government in Montgomery, where Joe M. Reed's brother is mayor. They also take issue with Judge Starr's ruling that there was no need for a recount in the committeewoman election, despite the tight margin of just 2 votes. Finally, the committee asked the SDEC to consider amending its bylaws to make clear that DNC members must be elected during the year of the National Convention. The SDEC ran out of time during its April meeting to pass the amendments, but says in its response that it will work to amend its bylaws at a subsequent meeting. To date, the bylaws posted on their website do not reflect this change. The major issue raised in this challenge was the composition of the voting body. The 33 members who were elected to fill vacancies before the DNC member election was held. As a reminder, one of the elections was decided by 25 votes and one by just 2. From the party's submissions, it appears that SDEC members did receive prior notice that there would be vacancies to fill at this meeting, but they did not receive a list of which seats were vacant. In addition to the alleged lack of notice concerning the vacancies, the challengers allege that several of the seated members were not eligible to be seated. In particular, they point to 6 members who were elected, even though they do not reside in the district they were elected to represent. They also point to 5 additional members who were elected to fill seats that the challengers allege were not vacant. The state party responds to the allegation that the vacancies were not properly noticed as follows. Quote, The appeal incorrectly states that only a select few had access to information regarding district-level vacancies on the SDEC prior to the election. Per its custom, the SDEC relies on individual members' knowledge of vacancies based on their personal contacts, residency in the area, and personal knowledge of the circumstances leading to the vacancy. The appeal seems to suggest that only Dr. Reed and the ADC were aware of the vacancies. Various SDEC members who are not members of the ADC proposed 16 new SDEC members at the meeting, all of whom were accepted, and in at least 2 instances were accepted over proposed new members supported by the ADC after residency verification, and in 1 instance over an objection by an SDEC member who was also an ADC member as to whether a vacancy existed." End quote. With regard to the 6 members who are alleged to have not lived in their districts, staff noticed that 2 of these individuals resided out of district soon after they were elected, so these 2 individuals were not credentialed, and the second-place finishers in their races were. 1 appears to be registered out of district, but owns property in the district. The state party has not been able to confirm the residency of the remaining 3, but it notes that no challenge has been filed with the state party as to these individuals' residency, and that the state party is the more appropriate forum to determine whether state committee members are eligible to serve on the state committee. With regard to the 6 seats that were filled without a vacancy, the state party has taken the position that these 6 members missed 3 consecutive SDEC meetings and are therefore no longer members per the state party's bylaws. The state party has provided an attendance log that indicates that these individuals did miss 3 consecutive meetings, and we have not been presented with any evidence that contradict the state party's records. However, the state party records indicate that many more individuals than these 6 have missed 3 or more consecutive meetings, and it is not clear from the filings why it was determined that these 6 seats were vacant while others were not. The Credentials Committee met on August 14th, 2025, and heard from both sides. Ultimately, they determined that the elections of the 2 DNC members with the closest vote margins were not valid due to concerns about the composition of the electorate and the method of tabulating votes, both of which could have affected the outcomes of the elections. The committee adopted a resolution requiring the Alabama Democratic Party to hold new elections for these 2 seats within 90 days, which must include a process to identify, investigate, and correct all discrepancies in the state committee member list, including membership status and eligibility. A list of vacancies to be filled by the state committee must be provided to members at least 14 days before the meeting at which vacancies will be filled. Notice that is designed to inform the state committee and the public of all the pertinent information concerning the DNC member elections and other aspects of the meeting, including but not limited to the date, time, place, and agenda of the meeting, must be distributed in a manner designed to ensure that notice reaches all interested parties. The distribution of an up-to-date list of all eligible voting state committee members to all DNC member candidates at least 14 days before the DNC member elections. The committeewoman and committee person elections must be conducted by a roll call vote conducted by paper ballot with each voter's name and signature on the ballot, and a representative of the challengers must be permitted to observe ballot tabulation, and a representative of the DNC must be permitted to conduct the tabulation. In the meantime, the Credentials Committee recommended that the DNC temporarily seat these 2 members, Donna Foster and Joe M. Reed, for the purposes of the August meeting. With regard to the election of Charlie Staton as committeeman, the committee determined that the irregularities raised by the challengers could not have affected the outcome of an election with a 55-vote margin, and recommended that the DNC permanently seat Mr. Staton as DNC committeeman from Alabama for the full 2024 to 2028 term. At the August 25th DNC General Session meeting, the full DNC voted not to approve the resolution as approved by the Credentials Committee. During the discussion on the resolution, DNC member Selena Vickers from West Virginia rose to speak against the report. Prior to her remarks, she raised a parliamentary inquiry for clarification of what would happen if the report was rejected by the body. Specifically, she asked if the report were to be rejected, would the 3 challenged parties not be seated? The chairman quickly conferred with Helen McFadden, our parliamentarian, before confirming to Ms. Vickers that the 3 members would not be seated should the report be rejected. Ms. Vickers then proceeded to argue that the DNC should reject the Credentials Committee report, pointing to the state party's prior issues with governance and elections. One of the challenged members then rose to also speak against the report for different reasons. It is unclear whether he understood that should the report be voted down, none of the challenged members would be seated. The DNC then voted down the report. As it stands, Alabama's 3 challenged members are not seated. In the supplemental filing provided by the challengers, they have withdrawn the challenge to the seating of Mr. Staton. Procedurally, to seat Mr. Staton, this committee will need to include language in a resolution to seat him, and the DNC will need to adopt that as part of their vote on the Credentials Committee report tomorrow.
Thank you, Sean. The challenging parties are now recognized to present their case. You will have 15 minutes. That's Ralph Young, Josh Coleman, Caroline Self, and potentially Yvette Lewis. I'm going to go ahead and start your guys' clock now. You got 15 minutes.
Thank you, co-chair, staff, and members of the Credentials Committee. I appreciate your time and ongoing attention. My name is Ralph Young, and before we get started, I want to speak directly for a moment. You know, we're not all that different. Chair Kelly, Dr. Reed, all of us, we're Democrats. While we bring different experiences and we may see the future through different lenses, but we all want the same things like exceptional schools, vibrant communities, not to mention a sound economy that works for the people. So understand the dispute before you today is not us versus them. It's instead just a disagreement about how best to achieve our common goals. That's why we need your help. We all want outcomes we can stand behind. We all want processes people can trust. But how do we get there? That's why we need your help. Which brings us to today. Because the General Session rejected the Minneapolis remedy, we find ourselves in New Orleans searching for a new solution that brings Alabama into compliance. The core challenge facing Alabama Democratic Party is the transition from an informal leadership model to a standardized system with clear, repeatable rules. Until then, we will remain caught in this cycle of disputes that limits our capacity to elect Democrats. History shows us that without structure, compliance becomes optional. In 2018, we saw a similar reluctance to adopt national standards until the DNC intervened. Without a documented objective standard, it's impossible to judge compliance. Without compliance, no valid election can transpire. Consequently, no additional members should be seated today. While the committee has already addressed the specific challenge regarding Charlie Staton, it does not resolve the broader absence of a defined process. In Minneapolis, this committee ordered a new election based on procedural regularities. Challengers ask that you do the same today. We are not here to relitigate the facts established in Minneapolis, but to acknowledge the reality confirmed by the Credentials report. Without concrete oversight, Alabama will continue to falter. Today's exit ramp is clear. We propose that the Credentials Committee provide technical assistance drafting a clear, documented process for electing Alabama's DNC members, including the chair and vice chair. Alabama has further bylaw incompatibilities, including the addition of participation fees, a rejection of presidential right of review, a reduction in quorum, among other bylaw hurdles. Alabama needs a lot of help. This Special Oversight Task Force will review the state party's operations to ensure adequate safeguards are in place. Not just suggestions, but to weave this committee's DNA into the very fabric of how Alabama operates. By delegating oversight to a small working group, the Special Oversight Task Force can negotiate the minutia of details at every stage of the election. This was done in 2019 with great success when Tom Perez's appointment of Yvette Lewis and Harold Ickes. This is not about punishment, but it's about ensuring that the big tent we built together in recent years has a permanent foundation. We ask the co-chairs to favor this structural remedy to ensure we are finally moving forward toward a partnership based on rules and not on tradition. While I have focused on the institutional necessities of these changes, the committee must also understand the material harm caused by our party's lack of structure. To illustrate the practical stakes of this procedural void, I'm calling on Josh Coleman and Caroline Self to provide their impact statements and why the structural relief we are seeking today is only viable path to restoration.
Thank you, Ralph, and thank you, everyone, and thank you for your time and attention to this. My name is Josh Coleman. I'm a challenger. By day, I serve as the Director of Public Affairs for the City of Birmingham, and I previously have served on the DNC from 2020 to 2024. You already know all the facts, so I'm not going to belabor that point here, but I do want to take a moment to say what this actually means to us. In 2019, when the DNC mandated that the Alabama Democratic Party add diversity caucuses to bring folks into the fold, that was an enlightening moment for many of us. Myself, I joined the SDEC in 2019 through the youth and the LGBTQ caucus. And that was a shining moment for queer people and young people in Alabama. It has often been hard to find a seat at the table or through an on-ramp, except through outside organizations such as the Young Dems or the Stonewall Dems. That's why I'm so excited to see the Young Democrats of America meeting coincide with this one here and the support that the DNC has given young leaders. Our party, though, still does not have many of those caucuses, and that is because change doesn't stay. Those changes were resisted after diversity caucuses were mandated. There was efforts led after the election in 2022 by Chair Kelly to dismantle the diversity caucuses that were required. That decision led to yet another challenge, as you are all aware. The DNC had to intervene once again to reinstate most of those diversity caucuses, with the exception of the Disability Caucus. We still, in Alabama, have no Disability Caucus, no Labor Caucus, no Women's Caucus. Then in 2024, we saw yet another escalation put forward, an attempt to see an alternate slate of delegates to the convention because our state party did not agree with the presidential right of refusal oversight. And that brings us here today. After multiple failed attempts to hold a competent and complete election, and after the challenge was referred back to this committee, Chair Kelly presided over yet another meeting that lacked quorum, pushed through additional bylaw changes, and added at-large members in a way that ensured control, not fairness. We've been here before, and I believe that's the problem, because while this continues, Alabama Democrats are not organizing in a way that we should be. We are not preparing to win elections. This isn't about personalities, it's not about factions, it's about whether we're willing to build a Democratic Party in a southern state that deserves a fair shake. And continue to allow this pattern, cycle after cycle, only gives Republicans what they want. People, young folks in particular, begin to wonder when enough is enough. When will folks have a seat at the table? We have real opportunity in front of us. In 1 month, on May the 19th, Democrats across Alabama will go to the polls and they will elect their new SDEC members. This summer, there will be an organizational meeting to elect a new chair and vice chair. That moment matters because, as we've seen over and over, this leadership cannot conduct a meeting and cannot hold elections. We need guidance, we need oversight. Obviously, we need help on identifying where people are registered to vote through Vote Builder and our online Secretary of State portal. I hope that this is the last time that you'll hear a challenge from Alabama. But history tells us that without structural action and change, the pattern will continue. There's too much at stake in the upcoming 2026 and 2028 election to let us sit idle.
I'm Caroline Self, and I'm also a challenger. I was elected to the Alabama SDEC in 2018, and I served on the DNC from 2020 to 2024. I currently have no position in the Alabama Democratic Party, but I work every day to elect Democrats. I'm working for Senator Doug Jones, who is going to be the next governor of Alabama, and I work for candidates all across the state. Alabama matters, and that's really the question that is before you today. Does Alabama matter to the DNC? I'd love to serve on the DNC again, but this challenge is about much more than the races that Josh and I ran. It's about whether the Democratic Party in Alabama works, whether we are inclusive, whether we have processes and a home for everyone who wants to be a Democrat in Alabama. The Democratic Party is a big tent, or it should be. In Alabama right now, it's not. This challenge is about whether the Alabama Democratic Party is small d Democratic. When I was elected to serve on the SDC in 2018, I'd recently moved back home to Alabama, in large part because after the 2016 election, I wanted to fight the good fight where the fight was the hardest. I thought that meant fighting Republicans. I didn't realize that the hardest part of that fight was going to be within my own party. Since 2018, so many people who were once involved, young people, members of diversity caucuses, former candidates, have given up on the Alabama Democratic Party, and I get it. Who wants to be where they aren't wanted? Who wants to be in a party that fights hard to keep you out? Who wants to be in a party where rules don't matter? I get it because last April, when I ran for the DNC committeewoman for re-election, there were no rules. We didn't know who we were running against. Yes, there were 20 candidates running, but I didn't know who was running for committeewoman or who was running for the at-large position. We didn't know there was going to be an election judge until she showed up right after we finished talking. And when the vote count started, we didn't know how it was going to work. Was there going to be a runoff? In my race, the first ballot, I won by 5 votes. 3 minutes later, there was a runoff that 14 votes magically appeared. It didn't make sense. I asked for a recount. Chair Kelly, Dr. Reed, and the election judge denied it. I left that day feeling, this party doesn't want me. I'm still here and I'm still fighting today because I believe in the Democratic Party. I believe in electing Democrats, and if we can get the Alabama Democratic Party to be what we need it to be, we can elect Democrats. And that's really what's at stake here. Because this year, for the first time in 20 years, we have strong candidates in every single statewide constitutional office. Doug Jones is running. The first 2 months of his campaign, he spent on the phone recruiting those candidates. We have candidates running in every federal office. We have candidates running in every competitive legislative office. And that's because of the work of Vice Chair Tabitha Eisner and a lot of people like, we recruited some folks as well. We have opportunity. We can win in Alabama, but we can't win without an Alabama Democratic Party that wants to elect Democrats. So, what we're asking you today is to care about Alabama, to believe that we can elect Democrats. We did in 2017. Look at what happened this week in Georgia with Sean Harris. He outperformed. It was the biggest outperformance we've seen in a special election since Doug Jones won in Alabama in 2017. We can do it again, but we need your help. If you do today what you have the power to do by appointing a task force to oversee the drafting of election rules and overseeing the organizational meeting, which will elect 4 DNC members, hopefully in August, then we can build an inclusive Alabama Democratic Party that functions in a democratic way. It can be a party where all those people who have been disillusioned want to come back. And we can change Alabama, but we can't do it without you. So we end today with this ask: help us, because Alabama is worth fighting for. We thank you for your time, and we reserve the balance of our time for a rebuttal.
Thank you. It looks like you ended at 12 minutes and 31 seconds as well. That concludes the presentation by the challenged parties. Oops. That concludes the presentation by the challenged parties. Oh, sorry.
And the challenged party is now recognized to present their case, and you will have 15 minutes. Respondents will present their arguments in the following order. We have Ben Harris, Chair Randy Kelly, Dr. Joe L. Reed, Charlie Statton, Joe M. Reed, Donna Foster.
Thank you. My name is Ben Harris. I'm the Vice Chair for County Affairs for the state party. I believe our Chair, Dr. Kelly, wanted to introduce our participants, so I yield to him for that purpose for this moment.
Ben Harris. Joe M. Reed.
Dr. Kelly, your mic is not on. There you go.
Ben Harris. Joe M. Reed and Joe L. Reed will be in that order, and I have submitted my concerns about the challenges in writing, and I want to yield my time here to give them a chance in order to give their input to this committee for your consideration. Beginning with Ben Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members. And I want to note some points of agreement and also to thank the challengers for their agreement with respect to Mr. Staton. I think that's important for Alabama to have representation from Mr. Staton, who has served so ably and so well on the DNC, and we appreciate that. I want also to note my agreement with Mr. Young's first statement that we're all Democrats and we're all working together to build a strong party in Alabama. We sometimes see things through different lenses, and this party has had a long history of division that we are working very, very hard to overcome. And I think many of our issues come from that long history. And so I want to thank you for your help and your attention, and on a point that is not all that different than the point that the challengers raised, I want to issue you an invitation. We believe we ran a fair process, an open and a well-noticed process. We've put all of that in our papers in terms of the notices that were sent out, how the votes were counted. There are a couple of points that the challengers raised that I disagree with. But generally, we believe we ran a very fair process. Folks had notice of the meetings. In terms of the issue with the vacancies, the vacancies were filled that we were able to fill. It was not a matter of deciding to fill some and not others. We just sometimes don't have folks to fill the spots. But you mentioned, and staff mentioned in the outset, that you have the power to appoint a hearing officer. Now, I don't know if that's procedurally still where we are, but I think if someone were to come down and take a good hard look at how this election was run and the efforts that we did make, that I think it would go a long way towards helping us find our way. If there are things that need correction, we certainly can take a look at it. But we believe that we did run a good, fair process. And it's hard in 15 minutes. It was hard on the Zoom session back in August to communicate this, and I suspect in your shoes it's hard to digest all of the facts that keep coming at you. But we believe, again, open, well-noticed, fair process. Only a handful of seated people have been challenged and remain subject to any kind of a question. I believe it's either 3 or 4, depending on how you count it. And we had one race that's still challenged that was decided by 25 votes, with only 4 votes potentially, at issue. So we think that a good hard look at this process from a hearing officer or officers, I think would show certainly that a good faith effort was made. And we believe would result in the seating of our members. I think it is very difficult to convey all of that in a short 15-minute time period, but just to go over a few of our points. We've provided the list of members that was compiled. Now, the list that you have, because it is somewhat public, doesn't have the addresses, but the addresses, were compiled. The notices to members and the notices to the public are in the materials. Those are our exhibits. They don't have to be displayed, but our exhibits C and D. The procedures that we sent, I believe it's our exhibit G, the procedures for the election, Ms. Self indicated, and this is one point where very respectfully I disagree, that she did not understand that there would be a runoff. There was a letter sent, it's in our materials, to each qualified candidate that explained the process and that a simple majority was required so that if on the first ballot a person did not get a majority, which is what happened in Ms. Self's race, there would be a runoff, and there was one. In terms of there being different numbers of votes, this was a standing vote. You stood to vote for candidate A, and then you sat down, you stood and voted for candidate B. You could abstain by remaining seated, so that where folks may have abstained, the vote totals might be different. The other just practical reality is that this was a very long meeting. You've got the transcript, it went for hours, and folks sometimes needed to take comfort breaks. But the totals, if you look at the totals, particularly the runoff totals, they're very close. And we again, and the staff did a very good job of summarizing, our staff, which was in communication with DNC staff prior to the meeting so that we went over the procedures that we were going to follow. Our staff did do, I thought, an excellent job of credentialing the members. There was the one instance with Attorney Gray that was alluded to in our papers, but it was a very rigorous process where IDs had to be presented. There were, in a couple of instances, people who were initially elected who could not be seated after the staff reviewed their district information, and it turned out they did not live in the district they had been elected to, and they were not seated. We are trying to run fair processes. We want the same thing that these challengers want. We are trying to build a party that is inclusive. We are trying to build a party that runs by fair procedures. We worked very hard to do this. We have limited staff, and we've got a lot of volunteers. These are big meetings. The DNC is, the SDEC consists of 200 and, I don't know, have the exact figure, but 200 plus members. It is hard, particularly in a party with a history of division. It is very hard to please everyone. It is very hard with volunteer effort to run a completely smooth process. But we are trying, and we tried hard here. And we do ask for your help. And if someone could come and look before you make a decision, realistically, we couldn't have another election before August anyway, because we're having a new SDEC elected in May, and the organizational meeting is in August. If you can send someone down, take a look at our procedures. If that hearing officer reports back that the election was fairly run, at least enough to seat one or maybe both of our members, please have them seated. If not, then we can always have the election in August. But what we would like to do is open up our process, let you come down and take a look and see the efforts that were made. I think that would go a long way towards helping heal some of the hard feelings that are in our party. And we need that. We've got a very important election. We've got what I think is almost an historic opportunity this year in Alabama. And we would like to bring this party together. So I will yield the balance of my time, and I apologize for watching my clock here, but I will yield the balance of my time, I believe, first, I guess, to Dr. Kelly, and then to both of the Reeds. Thank you.
Joel Reed.
Keep in mind, you got a little bit less than 5 minutes left.
Good evening, committee members. My name is Joe M. Reed, and I am the selection from the Alabama Democratic Party to represent Alabama on this committee. I practiced law for over 30 years, and as I sit here listening to the challengers, it's been somewhat difficult to hear some of the things that I've heard. Because the challengers present themselves as firefighters when they are indeed arsonists. And let me be clear and frank about what I mean by that. We've had trouble, sure, getting a quorum together, but this has been an organized effort by the challengers to defeat a quorum through emails and texts and other communications to make sure we never got one. And the purpose of that was the challengers wanted to extend their time on the DNC by 2 extra years. Okay, I know they're 4-year terms, but there was a glitch in the Alabama bylaws by calling our DNC members officers, and when we elect them, that if you listen to Alabama's rule, it would have given them potentially 2 years to serve. So they intentionally did that, okay? They're also part of a group, and you can look on your Facebook page, it's called the Unofficial SDEC. That is a group of a small faction of the Alabama SDEC whose sole purpose is to undermine the Alabama Democratic Party as it now stands. Chairman Kelly has done a great job. This group denigrates, disparages, and disrespects Chairman Kelly and other officers and the party just generally on a regular and routine basis. And it is embarrassing. I've never seen anything like that. What you haven't heard here today is that no Alabama bylaw was broken in these elections. The challengers have not cited one rule that was broken. No Alabama bylaw, no state law in conducting this election. What you have is a complaint of grievances, which normally in any meeting like the body that we have here would take place on the floor. Except, like in any place else, there are majorities here, majorities there, depending on what the issue is. And this particular small faction just simply doesn't have the votes to get through procedures and policies that they would like to see happen. And what they're asking this body to do is to substitute its will and its judgment for that of the SDEC electorate. Yes, Alabama is struggling a little bit, as most southern states are, and we all know why. But it's not for lack of trying here. There is no clandestine plot or plan to keep anyone from joining the party. We're doing as much as we can to do that. But the problem is that if there's a majority who's voting, and the will of that majority and the will of those voters can be simply cast aside because people are deciding to try to find any reason that goes wrong in order to invalidate an election, to throw that out, that's problematic.
You got 2 minutes.
Under Alabama law, try to make this quick, elections under Alabama law aren't nullified because of improprieties, what they call irregularities, bribery, anything like that. What Alabama says in Title 17-1541, if my memory serves me correct, and I think that it does, you have to show that, the challenger has to show that the prevailing party did not get the most legal votes, okay? And that, but for illegal votes, the challengers would have won. They haven't shown this body any evidence whatsoever. 12 people were challenged in my race, 12 people. My margin of victory was 25. Out of those 12 people, the challengers never asked them if they voted for me or not, but they know who their names are. You don't have affidavits in front of you that those challenged people voted for me or against me. But it's a simple question of math where I'm concerned. 85 is greater than 60, 84 is greater than 59 every day and twice on Sunday. If you got 12 votes that you challenge or you say are bad, you can have those. I would still win by 1 vote. If Charlie Statton can be seated, that means the election was fine. And I apologize for going over, but I asked for leave. But this is a math issue. And if you got 85 votes and your margin of victory is 25, and the challengers are saying we don't like 12, I would still win the race. Why would you rerun a race where the margin of victory is clear over any kind of objection? And again, no proof. And I ask this body, where's the proof that there are illegal votes? There's a great story here, great narrative of impropriety and misjudgment, misgivings, and bad actors. But there is one thing
Thank
my
you,
judge
Mr.
told me,
Reed.
no evidence. Thank
Mr.
you.
Reed, that is your 15 minutes, and that concludes the time for the presentation of the challenge party.
Does the other party want to rebuttal? Nope, you're good? Thank you to both parties for joining us today and for the time and effort you have expended to make your cases. The committee will now have 30 minutes for debate. During the debate, members may address questions to each party's counsel or representative. Individuals who are not members of the committee may only speak when recognized by the co-chairs. Members, if you have any comments or questions, please turn your name tags upward. If you would like to be recognized, we will do our best to call everyone in order. You seek recognition, staff will track the time. Okay, and can we get the challengers to return to the table just in case you have questions?
Dr. Reed, Mr. Harris, all parties should stay in case there's questions.
How about Vinod Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want a little bit of clarity on the elections that you cited that will be coming up on May 19th for the new SDEC members. I had talked to some people before that there were some concerns about the recruitment process for that, obviously it being open and I believe they charged a filing fee that was associated with that. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about that is are people willing to concede that that issue was dealt with, or is there a chance that after the elections of May 19th, people may be unhappy with the results and say, well, wait a second, we would challenge that? Or is there agreement from people going forward that whoever is elected at May 19th will be legitimately seated? And the follow-up question about that, because I'm a little bit confused about it, because I guess this is a mixture of the party officers and I guess it's the public primary ballot, which is run by the Alabama Board of Elections. Determining residency requirements and eligibility, does that fall to the Alabama Board of Elections to determine, or the Democratic Party? And how does that process work out? But the biggest thing is there a potential that even after May 19th, when we elect all new bodies, people may challenge and say, no, that process wasn't correct, how those were selected, and we might be back at square one? Or does everyone agree that if they're elected on May 19th and declared winners by the Board of Elections, that they're properly seated?
Yeah, I'll be glad to answer that. The matter of the filing fee is an ongoing issue with the Alabama Democratic Party. That was part of the challenge that was filed in 2018, and it was the RBC's decision that must be removed because, as Ken Martin explained, he saw it as a poll tax to have to pay a fee to participate in the elections. That was removed from our bylaws in 2019, and it was re-added again earlier this year. Oh, excuse me, last year. I forget, it's 26. So that is now back in our bylaws. It was in place when we did the new filing process, and everybody has since paid fees for that participation. As far as the additional people who were added, we now consider that moot because we have a new committee coming in, so it doesn't really matter what criteria elected the previous people. As far as the next question, it is the staff with the Alabama Democratic Party that is responsible for verifying the residency, and we only know the names, we don't have addresses, so we're not in an ability to say one way or the other whether they're residents or not. We have to rely on staff's.
If I may, speaking, I think first to the question about the fee. We are permitted, and the fee applies to folks who run for our elected seats, meaning the seats that come from the districts. In other words, we have a party that is put together by people being elected from state house districts, and those go on the public ballot that are administered by the Alabama Secretary of State. And we are permitted, as we understood, both in communications with your staff and others, that we are permitted to charge a ballot access fee. In other words, these are folks who actually go on the public ballot who get elected. There are then caucuses that will be filled at the organizational meeting that do not go on the public ballot. Those are the LGBTQ caucus, the Hispanic caucus, the Black caucus, if there are available seats. But in terms of the fee, that's where that comes from. I think in terms of, if you get the most votes, and it's a plurality, but if you get the most votes for your House district, yes, you will be on the SDEC. That is how that works. I don't think there's any dispute about that. In terms of assessing qualification, yes, that is something that the state delegates to the political parties, and our staff does that. The staff, to my knowledge, has always done that in terms of checking residency and things like that. I occasionally get asked questions, and I think in one or two instances we had people qualify, I believe, although the staff could tell you, who did not reside in the districts and were not permitted to qualify. But generally, we have a good staff, they do a good job, they have access to the voter data, and they can verify where folks live and where they're registered to vote and things like that.
Is that it, Mr. Thomas?
Actually, just to clarify, so is the question about eligibility of May 19th moot, and will you just say whoever's elected there is okay, or will you still, is there any chance somebody may still challenge on the grounds that, well, a poll what some people refer to as a poll tax was required, so those elections were invalid, or is that moot going forward, and you will agree that if somebody, an eligible person who lives in district is elected on May 19th, they will be considered elected and not challenged regardless of procedure?
So there were members added at our last meeting, I believe it was in October, and we're not challenging any of those because they will be replaced next month in May. So and there's no meeting, there are no votes to be taken in the meantime, so we consider that moot. To Ben's point earlier, our Secretary of State does not charge a fee. The $50 that the state party keeps is retained by the state party and is reported as a contribution to the party. And it is not optional, it is a requirement. So it's not a matter of some state law requiring $50 to be collected. It is a mandatory contribution.
I certainly didn't mean to suggest state law required it. It's a qualifying fee, just like everyone else who runs for any office on the ballot. So it's a ballot access fee that is paid to the state, just like a candidate for the state house or governor or anything else. It's not a very large fee to run for the SDEC, but there is a fee. It's a ballot access fee, and that's where that comes from, and it is for the elected seats and the elected seats only.
And it was added in October of last year.
But the bottom line, to answer your question, yes, in terms of will folks abide by the May 19th election? And, I mean, I can't predict what challenges might be brought, but the party is certainly.
And I'm sorry to keep on this, but that's the thing I want clarification
Right.
on. And from the challengers,
the fee can be waived also.
I think we vetted this pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can we move on to Vice Chairman Kenyatta?
Thank you so much. So I just want to, and I know, Mr. Chairman, you just said we vetted this. I don't want to tarry here, but I do just want to make the point, Mr. Harris, in your comments, as you said, it's permitted, but it is not required by state law. And I just want to speak for myself in saying, to me, it feels inappropriate, and it's something that I would encourage moving forward for you to review why that's happening. And obviously, it was just added in. So it was taken out. It was added back in. At this point, right? In some ways, it's moot. The election is going to happen. But I want to say for the record, and I want to respond to you're saying it's permitted under state law. There are a lot of things that are permitted that we necessarily shouldn't be doing. And so there's a term I'm sure you're familiar with where it's lawful but awful, and I would say that it's lawful but awful in my view. But that's not my question, so it's not my question. It's okay. My question though is at this point, at least from what I'm hearing, what I understand, I think there's general agreement about seating Mr. Staton that the challengers and the challengees sort of agree on. Feel like that's kind of where we are. We're gonna have elections next month with then a seating of the officers, reorganization done in August, so I'm understanding. I'm hearing everybody say that there should be some help and involvement of this body or whoever the co-chairs appoint to review and ensure that that election is done properly. But my question is another question, I guess, about the bylaws as it relates to the meetings and the amount of meetings, because a part of why we're here is that there are one aspect of a very complicated, tangled Christmas tree lights here, is that there were some people who removed because they missed a certain number of meetings. Is that correct? I'm understanding that? So there were some people removed because they missed a certain number of meetings. And then there were others who also missed the same number of meetings who were not removed for the same cause. And so has there been changes to your bylaws as it relates to meeting attendance?
And respectfully, Mr. Kenyatta, and I appreciate the question, I think there's a slight misconception there. If you miss more than 3 consecutive meetings, your seat is vacant and subject to being filled at the next meeting. Now, most of the time, we have more vacancies than we are able to fill, but it's not a question of, well, some seats are vacant and some are not. If you have missed more than 3, your seat's vacant. Now, you have the opportunity to come to the meeting and present an excuse. If someone, for example, had been out for, say, a medical reason or other reason that would be acceptable to the committee, it is possible that that could be waived. But your seat is vacant. Everyone's seat is vacant. In terms of the ones that were filled at this meeting, those were the ones that members were able to find others to fill. But the other ones could have been filled had we been able to find people to fill them. So it's not a question of, well, so-and-so has missed more than 3 meetings, and therefore that person's seat is vacant, but here's another person that's done that, and we're going to treat them differently. That did not happen. And it's a matter of your seat is simply vacant. That's been in our bylaws. It's clear. Everyone understands that. And we had, and I don't think the record is at all in dispute, the folks whose seats were filled had missed that many meetings. There were others who had missed that many meetings. Their seats could, and I wish they would, have been filled. But we simply were not able to find, among our members, we're not able to find folks to fill those spots. So I don't want there to be a misconception that people are being treated differently or picking, we're going to fill that one but not that one. That's not happening. That's not happening, and everyone has the same opportunity to bring people to fill vacant seats. Everyone had the same opportunity.
Okay, if I understood Mr. Rahman's, and I know there are other folks on the committee, so I just want to follow up. If I understood Mr. Rahman's presentation, that after reviewing the attendance records that were sent to verify that the members who removed did miss the number of meetings that would have removed them as members, it was then further identified that there were people who were credentialed and participated in the election who also missed a certain number of meetings who were able to participate?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
Okay.
I don't believe that is.
Okay, but I
if
mean,
I'm
I'm
subject to
just saying
question,
that's what,
not to my
that's what
knowledge.
was, that's what was said here. And my point is, my hope is that after May, my hope is that there is some contingent of folks who are part of ensuring that we have a free and fair election process, and that in August you can have the reorganization. Maybe some of the people who are here today will choose to step up and run. I hope that they do if they're interested. The point that I'm making is that whoever is there in the future, and thank you for your service to the Alabama Democratic Party, as you look at your rules, I want to highlight in this moment that the ballot access fee, as you're referring to it, A, I think is inappropriate, and B, as it relates to the meetings and people missing meetings, if there is a need to look at your bylaws to ensure that that is being applied properly, I would really ask and encourage that it be applied evenly across the board. We have those same rules in our bylaws for all of us, and so I want to make sure those are applied equally. And then I just want to end with saying something that I also heard you both say, and that I think everybody in this room shares that same commitment. We need to win in Alabama. We need to continue to build up this party in the South, and I hope that as this is finished, that we can find ways that everybody who's sitting at this table, can move forward in a productive way. And so with that, I'll yield back to the coaches.
Thank you. Very
If
shortly.
I may.
Hopefully shortly. We got to keep moving, but go ahead.
Very briefly, I just want to touch on a few points of what was said earlier. Our bylaws do in fact have a provision of if you miss 3 meetings, you're removed. What was not said was the fact it was not implemented over a course of 3 years. And during that 3 years, no one was given a warning when they missed 1 meeting or when they missed 2 meetings or even when they missed 3 meetings where they notified they were removed. It wasn't until this election that that rule was implemented. And only the people removed were the people they had replacement candidates identified for. That's why the other people were not removed.
That's not true.
That's false.
Let me
Thank
speak
you.
to
We're
that. I'm
gonna-
sorry. Let me,
Thank you.
if I
That's
may.
flat out false.
Thank you. We're going to move to Mr. Hughes in terms of the next question. Thank you.
One of my questions was actually answered through Representative Kenyatta's question. I had a curiosity about where the fee went to, and it's been clear that that goes to the Alabama Democratic Party. I do have 2 follow-up questions, which is just about the qualification process for the ballot, which is the state party does verify where folks live for residency. But if your record does not match the voter rolls with the Secretary of State, and you say this candidate is in House District 1, and the Alabama Secretary of State says actually they're in House District 2, does the Alabama Secretary of State still place that candidate on the ballot for House District 1 when they aren't qualified per the state for House District 1?
I think that's kind of a hypothetical because I'm not, in other words, I think our state staff uses the voter data that comes from the Alabama Secretary of State, so I'm not aware of a conflict occurring. I suppose that I think the Secretary of State largely does defer not only to our party but to the other party as well in their elections. I don't think the Secretary of State gets behind who we certify. I'm subject to being corrected on that, but I know that our staff is using Vote Builder, which has the data from our Secretary of State, so I'm not sure why there would ever be that kind of a discrepancy in terms of who gets to go on this ballot on May 19th, and I'm not aware of there being such a discrepancy this time.
Thank you. And the reason I ask is anyone who does use Vote Builder knows that that is not a live feed from the Secretary of State's office, and the information could be out of date depending on when you pull it, so thank you.
If I may rebuttal that, as the former executive director for Alabama, I can definitively answer your question. It is party-run primary, and therefore the Secretary of State makes no evaluation of the ballot that we present. So it is entirely up to staff to do that verification.
All right, thank you. And then my other question is just regarding the vacant seats that were filled and whether or not the total number of vacant seats deprived the State Democratic Executive Committee from having a quorum, and really just what the process is to fill them. In North Carolina, our State Executive Committee also requires folks who miss 2 consecutive meetings to vacate those seats, and they're then subsequently filled. But I also know that our state party staff sends the attendance records to the local parties to verify with their state executive committee members whether or not they actually were absent. Sometimes folks check in, they don't check in, they're present, and those corrections are usually made immediately after the executive committee meeting or immediately prior to the next meeting, so that there is a time to cure the attendance list. And so I'm just curious about how those seats were decided to be filled and that sort of thing, because I'm just going to play devil's advocate. It does sound as though there's a way to gerrymander the electorate on the state Democratic Executive Committee.
And I appreciate the question, and with great respect, I disagree with the last characterization, but I want to speak to it because I appreciate the question, and it goes to something that we continually work on. First, in terms of how attendance is verified and confirmed, at least in this cycle with our current staff, and I do want to praise them because they have worked very, very hard, and I wish we could pay them a lot more than we're able to pay them. But you are not permitted to enter a meeting until you have signed in and presented your credentials, and you've got to sign in, and there is a list, and you sign next to your name, if I'm remembering correctly, but there's a process to confirm that you are the person. And then the staff keeps the lists of who has signed in. So we do go off who has signed in. In terms of actually getting into the meeting, there's another step because there's a roped off area where the credentialed people are able to vote, and you can't get in there without getting past the folks who are checking credentials there. But the staff then compiles the list. We normally have a court reporter at our meetings, and we have a secretary who takes very good minutes, or the best minutes that can be taken at these meetings, in my opinion. And we sit down after, at least our custom has been to sit down after the meeting and verify all aspects before the minutes go out. But that also verifies who has attended, at least in my experience. Now, might there be some better way to do that? I'm sure there is, but people are trying their best to get it. There's not a process. The county parties don't. I'm the vice chair for county parties, and the county parties are not really involved in the selection of the elected folks of the SDEC. Certainly, people who come up through the county parties, and our county parties do a great job of encouraging people to participate in the state party. But there's not a way to really check with the county parties, and it's not part of their purview to ensure people are attending meetings at the state party. So we don't have that function that you mentioned in North Carolina. In terms of the vacancies, and I want to speak to a point that's kind of been raised some during some of these proceedings. We do not, and there are good reasons for this, we have not generally circulated to candidates a list of the members for them to contact, and candidates for state party office, for them to be able to contact in advance of these elections. There are good reasons for this, protecting people's privacy and all of that. A list of the vacancies formally is not published on the internet or circulated out to SDEC members. That's not something new. That is just how things have been done. We rely, and it has worked pretty well, on our individual SDEC members and knowledge of vacancies in their areas to bring people to meetings to fill vacancies. That has worked very well. And at this particular meeting, and I want to speak to one of the points here, it was not a matter of one side filling vacancies and the other side not filling vacancies. We went through and listed in our papers the vacancies that were filled. 16 of the vacancies were filled by suggestions from ADC, Dr. Reed and or ADC members. 16 were filled by other folks and with knowledge of our party by folks who opposed the folks who got elected. 16 to 16. Everybody had the same opportunity. And, you know, whether the process might somehow be improved upon, it came out pretty fairly here. And in at least 2 instances, to speak to the credentialing, in at least 2 instances, there was a person proposed by one side and a person proposed by the other side, and the person elected initially was the person proposed by Dr. Reed's side. They then had to go out for the staff to verify credentials, and the staff verified that the person elected didn't actually live on the right side of the line and live in the district, and they were not seated, and the person from the other side was seated. That happened at least twice. At least twice. So in terms of there being a commitment to fairness and to running a good election, it was abided by. We have a very good staff. We have very good volunteers, and
Can we
doing
try
our
to
best.
keep this a little bit more brief? I mean, we're at 25 minutes in that regard, so if you could kind of, so for the other side now?
Yeah, real briefly. It is the state party's opinion that by tradition, we don't notify fellow Democrats of vacancies. There's no effort of recruiting people who live in the districts or notifying the county chairs in those districts. We simply rely upon insiders to recruit other insiders to fill those positions. The challengers want that to be public. We want it to be part of the notice, and we want to get new blood into the party. Second, about not publishing the list, the committee members themselves don't have access to a list of the members. We have, in Alabama, 105 House seats. From that, we elect male and female. So there are 210 representatives elected on a primary ballot. Those voters, those Democrats, don't even know who represents them. There's no way for the representative government to work in this case. And it is, of course, the state party's opinion that's not published for privacy reasons. It was published up through Mark Kelly, our chair, in 2012, and starting with Nancy Worley, that was taken off of our website.
All right, I'm going to move on to Ms. Vickers now. Can you push your mic, please?
Before I ask my question, do we need to make a motion to extend the time of discussion?
What I'm going to do is once we get to 30 minutes, I'm going to close for everybody who's already got their flags up that will get through their questions in that regard, and then
All right, y'all better get your flag
keep it
up.
moving. I'm going to give folks a little bit of deference. I mean, we have a very, very large
Yes.
committee now in that regard, but I'm hoping folks can keep things brief.
Okay, all right, thank you, Rand. Okay, so for Mr. Harris, you started out by saying that you wanted our help, and I think that we very much would like to offer that. And Mr. Emreed, you mentioned that no ADP bylaws were broken during the election. I think the problem is that many of the things that have been brought up are not in compliance with the for our rules regarding how DNC members are elected. And so I just want to read just very briefly our DNC bylaws, Article 2, Section 3, and I'm skipping over some of the words just for brevity, that members of the Democratic National Committee shall be selected by each state in accordance with standards as to participation established under Section 11 of that article through processes which assure full, timely, and equal opportunity to participate. And then there's more, and I could go on and talk about, what is in Article 11, which is basically Article 11. This is a really beautiful section about full participation in all party affairs, and that came from the rules revolution and in the 1964 and 1968 and Dr. King and Fannie Lou Hamer, all of these the elements of the open party, all of this really wonderful stuff about having an open party came from the horrible things that happened in the South, and we want to honor that, and we want to make sure that everybody every Democrat in Alabama has a full opportunity to participate in the party and work for the policies that I think we would all like. So my question is, and then I would like to ask this, have any of the challenged or challengers, would you be open to suggestions from members of this committee to bring the ADP bylaws into alignment and consistent with the charter, the DNC bylaws, and the DNC policy? So I know because of time, I'd really just appreciate a yes or a no.
Yes, and we think we are, but yes, and that's why we're inviting you down.
All right, and the challengers?
Yes. We would welcome that review.
Okay.
And, Madam, if I might just say, sure. However, and my caveat is only that what I don't want is Alabama to have to accept a certain standard that no other state is accepting. And I'm fine with, if the National Party wants to come up with a flat way to do elections, a flat way to do everything, and we all agree to it as all 50 states and territories that are here, I'm 100% into that. I've got no issue with that. My issue is that a sliding scale where some rules apply to some states, they don't apply to other states. And so that I would not be in favor of. But anything else, sure.
Yeah, I think that we can only look at, I don't think any of us are going to be reading all DNC bylaws, but I think as those issues come up, and I'm sure they will come up, they came up in my state, as they come up through challenges, that's when we can address them. But thank you so much for answering the question.
Mr. Chairman.
And so no more, one more.
A point of privilege
No,
directly to you.
not for,
Just one question.
just let me finish what I was going to say. So we'll take all the questions of everybody that's lined up. We're past our 30 minutes, and please bear with me in that regard, and thank you. Yes, sir. Real quick.
You.
Do you recognize me?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I've got permission from the state chairman. My name is Joe Reed. I'm chairman for Minority Affairs at Democratic Party of Alabama. So I got permission from the chairman to invite you, the co-chair, and your lawyer to come to Birmingham on the 18th, on the 17th and 18th of this month. We are holding a Democratic convention there. The Alabama Democratic Conference holding its 66th convention, and the Democratic Party is also holding activity that same weekend. We extend to you an invitation. We're not being facetious either. We're not being funny. We're really serious.
Yes, sir.
You and your co-chair and your lawyer to come to Birmingham and be our guest. Come on Friday and stay to Sunday, and we love it.
Thank you, sir.
This is,
And
we've been
that's
serious about it.
this April?
Yes.
Next week, I'm sorry, I mean, I have a daytime job, it's a significant daytime job. I don't think I'll be able to make it, but really appreciate the offer, and I think, something in that line of getting us out there is
As a
likely
member
something
of
we would
the
be
Alabama
willing to do.
Democratic Party, I've received no notice of this meeting.
All right, well, in that vein, let's move on to the next question, but thank you, sir, thank you for the invite, truly appreciate it.
You said the head of Alabama Democratic Party.
Ms. Newton? Stephanie? Newton?
I'm right here.
All right, oh, sorry.
1 second. Okay. Can I please get some clarification on how quorum is handled in practice? Specifically, whether the party follows Robert's Rules of Order such that if a member raises a point of order about the absence of a quorum, is it verified before proceeding with any votes? And how is that consistently enforced, given the bylaws in the party are frequently, given that the bylaws use discretionary language like may fairly frequently? And additionally, can you also clarify how meeting minutes and attendance records are handled, including whether meeting minutes are distributed to the full body? And I also am curious about who has access to the attendance records.
We've only been able to access the attendance records through this committee. As members, we're not privy to that. So to get attendance records, we've had to have
So who has the attendance records? Is it just the chair? Is it the entire admin committee?
It's
or-
not clear to us who maintains those.
Okay. And then meeting minutes?
We receive those the day of the next meeting.
Everyone in the Alabama Democratic Party?
It's
your
representatives, the secretary provides those, and they're given to us at check-in for the next meeting.
Okay, and then also could you clarify quorum, that if someone asks, are you following Robert's Rules of Order?
So in our bylaws, that is, we have a section that adopts Robert's Rules of Order, which should allow for quorum calls, but in practice, we had our October meeting, and Caroline, correct me, but it was like 6 or 8 different quorum calls that were dismissed by the chair?
That's correct, and we actually, we were told at that meeting, I believe the numbers were that quorum was 91, we had 92 people there. After that, there were some things that were a bit like Alabama tends to be, not necessarily in order. A lot of people walked out. Ralph, I believe, had a quorum call. I was no longer a member of the committee. They were ignored, and that's when members were added.
Yeah, I made 3 quorum calls myself.
This man got 3 votes when he ran the last time. 3. Three votes.
If I may.
And that's what he's complaining about.
Sir, let's keep it cordial. Let's keep it cordial.
If I may, I think the question was addressed in terms of how, first, how quorum is determined and questioned. We have a parliamentarian at each of our meetings to whom those questions are submitted and rulings are made. I know sometimes folks disagree with those rulings, but to say that, the chair did this or so-and-so did that, it's submitted to a parliamentarian in terms of there being a ruling. This is part of, again, why we would like someone to come down and take a look at the process, because you're hearing different versions and you're hearing some hard feelings, and it's hard for you to get that in this proceeding. And I think if someone came down and took a look, I think that would help out a whole lot. In terms of how attendance, I think we've covered, I don't want to go long, I think we've covered how attendance is handled and verified. I'm happy to repeat that. The staff has sign-in sheets, the staff keeps the attendance records, and that is how that is done. And in terms of how a quorum is initially determined, when the correct number of people have signed in and been credentialed properly, the staff verifies that to the chair and to the parliamentarian, and that's how we begin the meeting.
Good, thank you. Mr. Atkins?
Yeah, thank you. So some of my questions were already answered, but I did want to ask, specific to the vacancies, because I think one of the issues comes up that we talk about the number of votes, but one of the core issues here is the composition of the electorate itself. So in terms of the notification of vacancies, right, there's been a lot of allegations back and forth, but is there, and please keep the answers short, please, is there a uniform process, because it's not spelled out in the bylaws, is there a uniform process that you have been using to notify the potential electorate of vacancies in a uniform rather than selective way? And if a member misses more than the requisite number of meetings, to, in fact, uniformly rather than selectively, notify and either remove or keep said members?
It's uniform. It's done the same. We fill vacancies at every meeting, and we fill them in the same way, which is that where folks have been able to recruit people to fill the vacancies, they're brought, their residency and other qualifications are verified by the state, and then they're voted in. And that is how it has been handled at every meeting, certainly that I've attended, and that process is open to each side. In terms of circulating a list of the vacancies, to the membership prior to the meeting, no, that does not happen. But again, in my experience, that has not been a part of what we've done. It's not a matter of being selective. Everyone is treated the same way. So that's the point I want to make. It is uniform. And it's treated the same way every meeting, and it was treated this way at this meeting, and we fill vacancies before every meeting. And we fill them in the same way that we filled them for this meeting. So that's the answer I can give you.
The state party is uniformly opaque. As members, we don't know who the members are. As members, we don't know who the vacancies are. There's no effort to recruit members in these districts. It is simply up to the state party, who has access to those records. We just don't know what's going on with their party.
Right, okay, thank you. My second question has to do with the vote. So I remember being told from my reading of the packet that the vote is by head count. Is that correct?
Standing vote.
Standing vote.
Standing vote at head count. Is there a particular reason that, and there's all sorts of allegations around that I'm not going to go into, is there some particular reason that y'all aren't holding written ballots?
Well, in terms of the standing vote first, each candidate was allowed to appoint a counter. In terms of why the vote is held by a standing vote as opposed to a written ballot, the standing vote allows everyone simultaneously in real time to observe the count, is one reason. And one benefit to that. In terms of there being paper ballots, I'm certainly not opposed to that. I think there's some administrative issues that would have to be dealt with there in terms of how you would do it, how you would handle it for runoffs, things like that. But it's not a matter of, oh, well, this is, some process that benefits one side or the other. We've done standing votes on everything that I've been involved with the Democratic Party that I can recall across multiple state chair administrations. So that's the best, that's simply how it has been done. That's the answer to that.
It's a standing vote because it's not auditable.
Say the second part. I only heard you.
You can't audit a standing vote after the fact.
One more time.
You can't audit a standing vote after the fact.
There's several things to add to that. The standing vote just doesn't work well when you've got 300 members. The state party is very proud of the fact that when Caroline's runoff, they went to the extra length of voting a second time. What they don't tell you is it came up with a different result, and they never said why they did the second vote. Further, at the October vote, at the October meeting, they did in fact try to do a roll call vote, except they didn't have a roster available. So instead, what we did is we passed a mic around the room and people just read their names out and their votes. So there was no, in that attempt at a roll call vote, there was no ability to actually verify their name was on the roster.
I just want to add one thing to this. Back several years ago when Nancy Worley was chair, I was a counter for a standing vote that was similar with the large body. It moves so quickly, there is no process. There is no this row stand, then this row stand, we're counting this section. It happens in a matter of a few minutes. And as someone who counted, I can say to all of you right now, I have no idea if my count was correct because the process itself was so flawed. So that's something that I think reading the documents, it does not come through, but the lived experience of living through these standing votes, it's just not a process that is good enough for us as Democrats, in my opinion.
I would like to add that this body, when back in August, used a standing vote when the Credentials Committee recommendation came to the floor. It was a standing vote then. And if it's not good enough for Alabama then, I don't know why it's good enough for the party now.
Let's move on. I mean, in that regard, I mean, I think we've all been part of votes all across the board in that regard. So, I mean, I think we've covered that. I'm going to move on to Ms. Campbell and her question.
Hi, thank you. First, let me say, as a state party chair, in the South, I keenly understand and recognize the need for organized and effective state parties in the South as we're growing. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that caucus members are full voting members of the State Executive Committee?
Correct.
And how many caucuses, or which caucuses are currently exist?
There are 5. There's the Black Caucus, LGBTQ, Hispanic, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native American. And if I've left one out, someone please correct me, but those are the ones that I believe we have.
So there's no Labor Caucus, Women's Caucus, or Youth Caucus?
I'm sorry, there is a Youth Caucus. There's a Youth Caucus. I apologize.
Thank you. How would additional members be added to the caucuses if they were needed, and who determines what the membership number should be?
And that is a process, and again, this is part of why I think bringing somebody down to look, because it helped us with our bylaws. The caucuses themselves, subject obviously to verification that the person is eligible to qualify both for the caucus and is a registered voter in Alabama. The caucuses themselves, and that was by negotiation and by bylaws that have been approved by this body, the caucuses themselves fill those vacancies. The vacancies are determined by the percentage of that caucus group's participation in the Alabama Democratic electorate, and that's what creates the seats.
So the chair does not fill the caucus?
The chair does not fill.
The caucus itself?
The caucus
Who
fills.
determines what the membership number per caucus is? Is that just decided by the percentage of the electorate?
It is decided by the percentage of the electorate.
So in 2020, when we last reorganized, we consulted the DNC, and they provided us an analysis in setting targets, and then we used that to figure how many were filled at the ballot. I would assume we would use that same process next month after our May election.
And if I may speak to one thing, we're getting a little far afield in terms of what we're here about, which is the seating of our DNC reps. The thing that I would, and I'm respectfully answer all the questions that the committee has, the point I want to make is that there are a lot of issues. You all are raising a lot of questions. I think if someone comes down and makes a determination about whether we ran a fair election, that would go a long way towards helping to heal this party. If we need to have another one in August, we certainly can. But if someone will come down and take a look, I think you will see at least that folks are acting in good faith. We may see things through different lenses, but we have the same goal to build this party. So, sorry to get off topic there.
No, and I want to be sure that I have every belief that Alabama wants a fair and fully a fair Alabama Democratic Party. That's what we all want, and your election should be fair as well. So my only concern is that if vacancies exist and they're not filled, that can determine what the electorate for elections are. And I just want to make sure that I just wanted to clear that in my own mind, that I understood that. I do just want to say too, I think the attendance records should probably be published in the minutes of the meeting so that everyone who attends the meeting or is a member of the committee can see who attended the meeting and then would know when vacancies should be arising due to attendance lapses. And also when there are vacancies, they should be made known to the whole committee, to anyone who has a relevant need to know at the same time, and not parsed out. I'm not saying that they are, but everyone should know at the same time rather than some individuals knowing and others not, so that there's an opportunity for everyone to recruit members in their district for those vacancy seats. So I just wanted to point that out. I think compliance with your bylaws is just the easiest way for everything to be fair. Certainly that's how we try to make sure we do things in Tennessee. But thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ms. Vasquez.
Good morning, everyone. Selena Vasquez from Texas, and most of my questions were answered, but I do have one quick question to the Alabama Democratic Party, if y'all are willing to, moving forward, publicize the list of vacancies for these positions. I'm a former state Democratic Executive Committee woman in Texas, and all of these were always public because how else would I have gotten elected? So I understand maybe not sharing personal addresses, but what about email addresses or other ways? But are y'all willing to, moving forward, publish the list of vacancies publicly to everyone?
Well, I have never heard any objection to doing that. We've been operating under bylaws that, again, were approved by the DNC and that had not required that. So in terms of running this election, we followed approved bylaws and we vetted our procedures, not only with our staff, but we remained in communication with your staff. So there was an effort to have a good and fair election. Not to say that processes can't be improved, and I think everyone would be open to a process that would allow that in a way that protects privacy. We do have parts of Alabama where it is hard for folks to be publicly identified with the Democratic Party. And I know that just from my work with the county parties, that it is hard to do that because of the deep red nature of the state. And so protecting people's privacy and doing that in a careful, considered way, I think is something that I think everybody would consider. But I don't think it would be rashly done, but I think we're open to improvements, no question.
Thank you. I'm going to take a moment of privilege and invite my co-chair to ask a quick question, and then we're going to be done with the questions and then moving on.
Thank you. And many of you might not realize that I'm a daughter of Alabama. Grew up in the big city of Smith Station, Alabama. And so a functioning, strong Democratic Party in Alabama is very, very important to me. All of my family is still there, and I want to see opportunity and growth, and I want to see the blue wave that hit my now home state of Georgia move on across the state lines into Alabama. So having people engaged, bringing more people to the party is critically important to me. But I also serve in the seat in the United States Congress that was held by the late Congressman John Lewis, who is also a son of Alabama. And holding the seat, like making sure that things are fair and proper or important to me. And I keep thinking back to what you said, Vice Chair Kenyatta, awful but lawful. And I was looking for, I heard the conversation around the fee to get on the ballot. And we've had fees to get on the ballot. Even as a member of Congress running in Georgia, I have to pay $5,220 to get on the ballot. But if I don't have that, I can sign a pauper's affidavit, because those fees go to the state party, a portion of them. I can sign a pauper's affidavit and get signatures to get on the ballot. Is there a way for people to still run for these positions, even if they're not able to pay the fee?
Oh, absolutely, and you don't have to get signatures. You can have the fee waived. That's absolutely a part of it. It's there, but if you can't pay it and you're able to
And that
Make
is
your case.
written in the bylaws so that people know that it is
Yes.
an
Yes.
option?
Yes.
And the current bylaws, the bylaws were changed in October, correct?
The bylaws.
Or recently, sometime in the last year.
The bylaws were sort of redone in a significant way by an agreement after working with the RBC in February of 2024. There
And
have
are
been
those
amendments
current
since
bylaws
then.
on the website, on the Alabama Democratic Party website?
I don't know if the absolute up-to-date version, but I believe the bylaws are published on the website. And whether every single amendment has made it in, I do not know that, but the bylaws are on the website and there's an effort.
Mr. Harris, I'm going to ask you to check that for me so that people who are looking to gain access know that that's an opportunity so that they can run, because that awful but lawful is ringing in the back of my mind. And also, as a former state party chair, county party chair, and someone who was once on the outside trying to get in, knowing what positions are available to run for is critically important, but also I know that it is difficult as a state party chair when you have some counties where you just can't fill slots. And so you fill the ones that you can and you keep it moving. But we have to have a way for people to know that these slots are available, because sometimes people just have to be asked and they'll step up and they'll help to fill those slots. So I am your next door neighbor over in Georgia, and I commit to whatever the resolution is in this committee today. I am here to help support the Alabama Democratic Party, because I know that a strong Alabama Democratic Party means wealth and opportunity for all of my family that is still there. So thank you all for allowing me to ask my questions today.
One follow-up. My experience has been different with the Alabama Democratic Party. In January, I asked staff what the process was to waive the fee. It took 3 days for the staff to get back with me, and the answer was to speak with the chair, which I did on the last day of filing. And the chair informed me that it wouldn't be fair to waive my $50 fee because everybody else paid.
This gentleman's wealthy. He wanted a free ride, and he finally got it. That's what happened.
He's been the executive director, so he knew.
Yeah, this man is wealthy.
Yeah, he was the executive director, and he was.
Let's
qualified for a pauper.
let's keep it cordial. Let's keep it cordial.
All time has now.
You're done. It's time to.
One final question, Mr. Chairman.
No, sir. No, sir. We're done.
You
We're
done?
done. We're done.
Okay, I'll come and ask you when it's over. I guess you can tell me. You can answer my question when I come up there. Okay.
And we're done.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for your thoughtful questions and discussion today. Again, this is a very important issue, not just for our DNC, but as a co-chair of this committee, it is personally important to me that we get this right and that we give people opportunity to get engaged in the party and we grow and have a strong state party, because that's how we turn states blue to make a difference in people's lives. At this time, we will consider a resolution to dispose of the pending challenge. Would any member like to present a resolution to address this challenge?
Madam Chair. Matt Hughes from North Carolina. Thank you for recognizing me. I would like to share a proposed resolution with the committee. This resolution has been shared with staff ahead of the meeting.
Are we going to put it on the screen?
All right. In this proposed resolution, I'd recommend our committee request the full DNC membership seat Charlie Staten, given the challenge against him has been withdrawn by the challengers. The proposed resolution would refrain from seating Donna Foster or Joe Reed. Rather, it outlines requirements for a new election. Specifically, that these elections be held in August when the state party elects their officers, and after the new state committee is elected on the primary ballot on May 19th of this year. The procedural requirements in this resolution and some of the comments and concerns raised today are in this resolution, and they come also from the January 2025 and August 2025 resolutions that were adopted by this committee. The draft resolution also calls for the following: that a representative of the challengers and a representative of the DNC must be permitted to observe the election and ballot tabulation process. Given the full DNC membership did not adopt the resolution in Minnesota that would have temporarily seated Charlie Staton, Donna Foster, and Joe Reed, I believe we should ensure that these new elections are held rather than trying to temporarily seat Donna Foster and Joe Reed.
I would propose that we, I don't know, Andy or somebody, if you would go through and read the whole resolution line by line in terms of everybody. I think that would be helpful for the committee as a whole. We're gonna go through all the whereases. I mean, I think in terms of for your own information, it's important to go through it all and that we take the time to do that. So, Andy or.
Whose voice does the committee want to hear?
Right, hey, yeah, right on. Rochambeau?
I'll do it. Okay.
Let's go, Andy.
In the challenge as supplemented and appealed before the Credentials Committee of the Democratic National Committee, filed by Josh Coleman and Caroline Self to the credentialing of Donna Foster, Joe M. Reed, and Charlie Staton as DNC members from Alabama, the committee resolves as follows. Whereas the the Alabama Democratic Party attempted to elect its 2024-2028 DNC members in the summer of 2024, whereas in August 2024, the state party certified to the DNC secretary that the challenge parties had been elected as Alabama's 2024 to 2028 DNC members, whereas the challengers filed the instant challenge in September 2024, alleging procedural irregularities in these elections, whereas the state party recognized the concerns raised by the challengers and therefore determined that after the 2024 Democratic National Convention, its 3 DNC member seats were vacant pursuant to the DNC's Charter, Article 3, Section 3, whereas the state party attempted to hold another DNC member election at an Alabama State Democratic Executive Committee meeting in October 2024, but the meeting failed to reach quorum. Whereas the state party's bylaws, Article 2, Section 1, provide that in the event of a vacancy in any other executive office, the same shall be temporarily filled by the executive board until the next meeting of the state committee, when the unexpired term will be filled. Whereas after the October meeting failed to reach quorum, Chair Randy Kelly called a meeting of the executive board to temporarily fill the vacant DNC member seats. Whereas the state party again certified to the DNC secretary that the challenge parties had been temporarily selected as Alabama's DNC members. Whereas in November 2024, the challengers submitted an addendum to their challenge alleging additional concerns about the October executive board meeting. Whereas in December 2024, the committee's co-chairs, pursuant to their authority under the committee's rules of procedure, sent a letter to the challengers, challenge parties, and the state party establishing a timeline for the committee's consideration of the challenge. Whereas the co-chairs informed the challenge parties that their answers to the challenge would be due on January 10th, 2025. Whereas the letter informed the parties that upon receipt of the challenge party's answer, the challenge would then be deferred to the state party until May 30th, 2025 for its consideration. Whereas as permitted under Committee Rule 6I, the state party intervened in the challenge on January 7th, 2025 and submitted its own answer, which explained that the state party resorted to the use of the executive board in order to comply with DNC Charter Article 3, Section 3. Whereas the state party also informed the committee in its answer that it intended to hold an open, well-noticed, and fair election for its 2024 to 2028 DNC members at its next meeting in April 2025. Whereas on January 11th, 2025, the challenge party submitted their consolidated answer. Whereas on January 17th, the challengers objected to the temporary seating of the challenge parties as DNC members at the DNC winter meeting. Whereas on January 30th, 2025, the committee discussed the parties' filings during an open committee meeting. Whereas the committee resolved that the challenge parties be temporarily seated as DNC members from Alabama for the purposes of the 2025 DNC winter meeting, and the DNC approved the resolution. Whereas the committee also provided recommendations for the state party's April 2025 DNC member elections to ensure fairness and transparency. Whereas the state party held its DNC member elections on April 26, 2025. Whereas the state party reports that Donna Foster won her election for committeewoman 73 to 71, Charlie Staton won his election for committeeman 97 to 42, and Joe M. Reed won his election for committee person 84 to 59. Whereas the challengers filed an appeal to the April 2025 elections on May 9th, 2025, alleging that 1, over 30 state committee seats were filled in the April meeting prior to the DNC member elections without prior notice of which seats would be filled at the meeting and why. 2, the procedures governing the election were not clear. 3, ineligible individuals were allowed to vote. 4, the election judge appointed to oversee the election disclosed conflicts of interest. And 5, a request for a roll call vote and or recount in the committee woman election was denied despite the close margin of 73 votes to 71. Whereas the state party responded that 1, the DNC member elections were properly noticed, 2, state party staff and volunteers ran a strict credentialing process, 3, the DNC member elections were conducted under the supervision of an election judge who was a well-respected member of the Montgomery community, 4, 2 of the elections were decided by wide margins, and 5, if there are concerns about the filling of vacancies in the state committee itself is the more appropriate venue to address these concerns. Whereas the committee held a public hearing on August 14, 2025, at which the challengers, challenge parties, and state party had an opportunity to present evidence and argument to the committee. Whereas the committee resolved that based on the record and proceedings before it, which indicated that the outcomes of the elections for a DNC committee woman and committee person were likely affected by the procedural irregularities raised by the challengers, including the composition of the electorate and the process for tallying votes, the elections of Donna Foster as committee woman and Joe M. Reed as committee person were not valid, and the SDEC would need to hold new elections for committee woman and committee person with certain procedural safeguards before the committee would recommend seating them to the DNC. Whereas the committee recommended that, notwithstanding the foregoing paragraph, the DNC should temporarily seat Donna Foster and Joe M. Reed as members of the DNC for the August 2025 DNC meeting pursuant to Article 2, Section 10B4 of the DNC's bylaws in order to allow Alabama Democrats an opportunity to participate in DNC affairs in the interim. I'm sorry, can you slow down, please? Yes. Whereas the committee further resolved that with regard to the election of Charlie Staton as committee man, the irregularities raised by the challengers could not have affected the outcome of the election with a 55-vote margin. Therefore, the committee recommended that the DNC permanently seat Mr. Staton as DNC committee man from Alabama for the 2024 to 2028 term. Whereas the resolution adopted by the Credentials Committee and presented to the general session of the Democratic National Committee was rejected and returned to the committee for further consideration. Whereas the challengers withdrew their challenge to the seating of Charlie Staton in a supplemental filing submitted on March 11, 2026. Now, therefore, based on the record and proceedings before it, the committee hereby resolves that the state party must hold new elections under DNC supervision for DNC committee woman and committee person in order for the committee to recognize the validity of its elections for committee woman and committee person, and therefore recommend the seating of those members by the DNC. Such elections must include the following features. A, compiling a list of each SDEC member's most current contact information no later than 14 days before the notice of the next SDEC meeting, and use that contact information to provide each and every member notice of the DNC member election. B, a process to identify, investigate, and correct all discrepancies in the SDEC member list, including membership status and eligibility. C, a list of vacancies to be filled by the SDEC must be provided to SDEC members at least 14 days before the meeting at which the vacancies will be filled. D, notice that is designed to inform the SDEC and the public of all pertinent information concerning the DNC member elections and all other aspects of the meeting, including but not limited to the date, time, place, and agenda of the meeting, must be distributed at least 30 days in advance of the meeting in a manner designed to ensure that notice reaches all interested parties, including SDEC members, Alabama voters, and potential candidates. E, provide clear instructions to SDEC members and the public for what steps an individual must take to become a candidate in the election, including any filing requirements or deadlines in a reasonable amount of time before the deadline. F, the distribution of an up-to-date list of all eligible voting SDEC members to all DNC member candidates at least 14 days before the DNC member elections. G, ensure that only current SDEC members are able to vote in the election through an organized and transparent credentialing process. H, the committee woman and committee person elections must be conducted by a roll call vote conducted by paper or electronic ballot with each voter's name and signature on the ballot. I, appoint an election judge at the time the meeting is noticed to administer an impartial election. The election judge shall not be a candidate and shall be an impartial Alabama Democrat in good standing who has not endorsed a DNC candidate and will not be voting in the DNC member election. And J, a representative of the challengers and a representative of the DNC must be permitted to observe the election and ballot tabulation. The committee further resolves that the DNC not seat Donna Foster and Joe M. Reed as members of the DNC until and unless they are elected in a process that complies with the requirements listed in the preceding paragraph. The committee further resolves that the election of its DNC members be held in August, along with the election of state party officers after the election of SDEC members on the May primary ballot to eliminate any question of vacancies on the SDEC. The committee further resolves that because the challenge against him has been withdrawn, Charlie Staton be permanently seated as a committee man from Alabama.
Okay. Do we have a second on that resolution, on the motion for the resolution?
I second the motion. Could you hear me?
Judy Mount from Florida has seconded the motion So a resolution has been offered and seconded, and in just a moment, staff will display the proposed resolution on the screen. Per our rules, the proposed resolution will be discussed for a maximum of 20 minutes, with time equally divided between proponents and opponents of the resolution. Members, the floor is now open for discussion. Please turn your name tints up if you wish to be recognized. Virgie Rollins of Michigan.
To the co-chairs and to the committee, I am gonna support this resolution with a comment. I'm grateful that Charlie Stanton was withdrawn from the challenge. This matter has been going on for a number of years, and I just hope if there is another election that it will not be challenged, and I hope that the rules are put in place that everybody can agree to, because this matter has gone on. Every time there's an election, there is a challenge. And there has to be diversity in Alabama. That's important. When I look at before, when we had difference in the elector for DNC members, there were no challenge. And now we do have a challenge. So I'm gonna vote to say yes on this, but I also hope that the next election, we won't be here. This would be the end of it. Thank you, Ms. Co-Chairs.
Mr. Thomas of North Carolina.
Yes, I have a parliamentary inquiry here. Pursuant to Robert's Rules of Order, Section 52, would it be in order to make a motion to go to informal consideration so that we can ask questions about this instead of simply debating for or against?
So we had discussion to go through all of the points that were made, and each side had an opportunity to present. And so now we are discussing whether we are supporting or opposing the resolution before us that has been motioned and properly seconded and is on the floor.
Okay, the only reason I was asking was when we were doing the question and action period, this hadn't been posted. So this raises different questions.
If there are sections of the resolution that you are opposed, you can speak to that.
Well, I'm more of a question here as to why the division of I'm concerned, and I'm still undecided here, because the sentence say that the election of the first individual is no longer challenged because the vote margin was large enough, which I understand. But it's obviously I understand that the election for the third person, Carolyn Self, that election is also because that was only 2 votes, so that's clearly in the matter. The third individual, it seemed like the numbers quoted said that he won by a large enough margin. Where was the cutoff point to determine what was a big enough margin to not change a result and what was not a big enough margin to change a result? Basically, I'm wondering why Joel Reed is not included along with Mr. Stanton as being exempt.
What I would say to that is the challenge was withdrawn. We're not looking at the number of different votes. We're looking at the fact that the challenge was withdrawn in regards to Charlie Stanton.
Bill Owen of Tennessee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Do we really need 20 minutes more to discuss this? Is it inappropriate to move the question? And I think just as a test vote to see if the votes are there, if we have 2/3 to shut off debate, let's go on and vote. So I move the question.
Is there a second?
I had my tent up first, and I've been waiting.
Parliamentary inquiry, doesn't that shut off all the discussion and we have a vote?
A motion is on the floor and has been properly seconded to close debate and move the question.
Point of order. Don't we already have other people with their discussion tents up?
We did, but we had that motion in the interim, and so we have a vote on that.
So we have to address the motion before us.
It takes a two-thirds majority in that regard. So, I mean, it's not a debatable one. So we're. Yeah, but I don't, the looks that I'm getting, I don't think he wants to withdraw it. I think he wants to move on. Yeah, so I mean, you can vote it down if, you know, but I would say we should have the vote.
So we have a motion on the floor that has been made and properly seconded. And with a 2/3 vote, you can vote this motion down and continue discussion. We will now vote on the motion that is before us. All those in favor, we're going to do it by show of hands. This is to close debate and vote on the resolution. One, two.
Okay.
That's 5 in favor. All those opposed? It did not pass. We will continue debate in the order that the tent cards went up. Steph Newton of Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes, for putting together this body of work. I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to extend DNC oversight to the August chair and vice chair elections, as well as they are also DNC members. If we are aligning bylaws and overseeing these member elections, it makes sense to ensure the leadership election follows the same clear, trusted process. This would keep everything consistent and would avoid repeating any additional or similar issues. So the amendment language I'd like to add in would be further resolved that the election of the Alabama Democratic Party chair and vice chair at the August organizational meeting shall be conducted under the supervision of the Democratic National Committee to ensure the process is consistent with the National Party Charter, DNC bylaws, and the 6 elements of an open party, and is carried out in a transparent, fair, and accessible manner.
I'm gonna ask Andy in that regard. Is that within our scope?
It is not currently within our scope. Right now, we are considering a challenge to the seating of DNC members and not chair and vice chair. But I would hope that if we have DNC staff or members who are down to help with the election in August, that there would be an open conversation about procedures for chair and vice chair so that we can ensure that all of the elections are clean and don't get challenged.
Sorry.
David Walters of Oklahoma.
Yeah, this is less debate, so I'm going to speak fast before I'm ruled out of order. But my heart really breaks for you in Alabama, because your state is very similar to my state in Oklahoma. And we have gone through process fights like this, like you're going through. And I would wager to say that our very populist, very democratic state, in part, turned maroon, like Alabama has turned, because of these process fights. And I've listened to both sides. You both have points that you can argue ad infinitum. I've been involved in election challenges, as you all know, and you can be very passionate about the details. But what's important at the end of this day is that you all find a way, and I'll take up a collection to pay for the dinner. You all find a way to get in a room and work this out, because this is killing your state, and it has killed ours in the past. We've moved beyond that now. You don't see us, we've been here before in these challenges, but we've moved beyond that, and we have a very high-level functioning party that recruited a record number of candidates, and we're going to start closing that gap. And you will do exactly the same if you can find a way to quit wasting so much time and resources on these process fights. I know you're passionate about it. I know both sides feel like you're aggrieved, but you've got to get past that. Thank you.
Donna Susi of New Hampshire.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I wondered if we could just scroll to the portion of the seating of Charlie Staton, because as I understand when it was read, it simply said that he was permanently seated, and I wondered if we needed to qualify that as permanently seated for the duration of term. Because permanently seated obviously states that there will no longer be an election and he will remain in perpetuity, which may be the intent, but I do think it should qualify that it was for the term. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Donna, does this language work to
Without
add?
objection.
Oh.
To the next election.
Selena Vickers. There is no objection.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I would like to move an amendment to the resolution. I sent this in, Sham has it. Under the, there's a whereas clause and then there's a therefore clause or a resolve clause. I suggest that this be the next to the last whereas clause, and it to say, and this is in line with what folks agreed to and what I believe is in terms of our scope related to bylaws, Article 2, Section 3A. And so the whereas clause would state, whereas the ADP bylaws are not in alignment with the national charter, DNC bylaws, and national party policies, including without limitation the 6 elements of an open party. And then under the resolve clause, after the clause that says that Ms. Foster and Mr. Reed would not be seated unless they are elected in a process that complies with the requirements listed in the preceding paragraph, the next paragraph would say, the committee further resolves that a working group of volunteer credentials committee members provide the Alabama State Party with proposed bylaw amendments for consideration and adoption at the August organizational meeting, which, if adopted, would bring the ADP bylaws into alignment and consistent with the national party charter, bylaws, and policies.
I'll second that. I really appreciate, Selena, you bringing this. Oh, there we go. It names something important that we can't ignore, which is that the bylaws need to be aligned with our national standards. If we want people to trust the process, the rules need to be clear and consistent. This amendment helps make sure that we're not just reacting to the situation, but actually fixing the underlying issues moving forward. Thank you for that.
We have a motion made and properly seconded.
My comment would just be to ask Andy too on this a little bit. I mean, my concern is just getting outside of our lane associated with credentials challenges. We're here to address the credentials challenges associated with these folks. And, you know, this isn't, at least in my eyes, in terms of the way I look at the road for the credentials committee, you know, I think they're important issues, important things to raise, but I just am leery of us trying to get outside of our scope. In terms of our scope is to make a determination on whether to properly seat these folks. What we're saying is you've got to do these steps in order to be properly seated, and you know, this is, in my eyes, a bit outside of what our scope and role is. Important part of things, but just trying to stay in our lane. I almost look at it as, you know, you've got state parties want to be run the way state parties want to be run. The DNC wants to do things the way the DNC wants to, and that middle ground can be rather confrontational in terms of dictating to state parties. And when that's coming from the Credentials Committee versus the Rules Committee or some other
Point of inquiry.
venue, I think that's a bit concerning.
A point of parliamentary inquiry about that. Has this body already, I understand the scope of the discussion, but has this body already decided not to seat the individuals and we have to vote to not seat them before we?
Well, no, we already
Okay.
determined not to seat them in, was that Minnesota? Where? Yeah, but they are not currently seated. We had a hearing like this previously, and then there was the situation where we voted it out of committee, and then it went to the full DNC went through, and it got pushed back in terms of not seating anybody. Andy?
One thing that I would caution this committee is there is precedent of the Credentials Committee finding issues with the Alabama Democratic Party's bylaws and assigning members to assist the state party in how they might consider amending their bylaws to bring them into compliance with our process. The subject matter of this challenge, though, has not been what is in the state party's bylaws, and it is unclear, at least to me, what exactly in the state party's bylaws is not compliant with the DNC charter and bylaws. So if the committee is inclined to want to work with the state party to amend its bylaws, I would recommend that there be a fuller discussion of what this committee thinks is not in compliance right now, so that the working group and the state party have an understanding of what the path forward is.
And again, I would just emphasize, I think our role is on this challenge, on the credentials themselves, not in terms of redefining what and how Alabama's party bylaws are set up. I think that's outside the scope of the Credentials Committee in that regard.
Yeah, so the amendment to the resolution is out of order for the scope of this committee, or the hearing for this committee.
So you guys are ruling that amendment out of order?
Yes, for the scope of what we're doing today and what is before us in this committee.
Okay, can I just speak briefly to that? Yeah, I just want to respectfully say we're dealing with more than just this challenge, and I think we all know that because of the very, years and years and years long issue with noncompliance and the challenges. And I personally think, and I have no issue with this going to rules and bylaws as opposed to credentials, but I think that it is our responsibility as DNC members to ensure that our bylaws under Article 2, Section 3A that very clearly say that the way our DNC members are elected have to be in compliance with Article 2, Section 11 about full participation of all party affairs. So I hear you, I just respectfully disagree, and we can still be friends. And I think, again, we all want the best thing for Alabama.
And what I would say to that, though, is that we will, in terms of the co-chairs, definitely raise this concern with the rules and bylaws chairs associated with it in that regard, and have I'm happy to take some more comments from you in terms of in writing or whatever when we sit down and talk to them. But I would, you have our commitment to carry that forward in terms of raising that concern with them. But like we talked about, in terms of our lane is the credentialing of these folks, and that wasn't raised as part of this challenge, and so it's really outside the scope. Yes, ma'am.
Matt Hughes.
And we can still be friends.
Matt.
Yes, so I'm speaking in favor of the resolution, but I do think that Ms. Vickers' points are well taken. In Los Angeles, I did suggest that one of the things that the DNC needs to do is to be more proactive in terms of the governing documents of all 57 state parties. And perhaps I'm suggesting to the chairs that when they do speak to the co-chairs of the Rules and Bylaws Committee, that perhaps some sort of working group, whether it's formal or informal, composed of volunteers from both committees, could probably work with staff to come up with some sort of best practices, standards for the charter and bylaws of these different state parties because, and I'll reiterate what I said in Los Angeles for the benefit of the co-chairs, is that we know it's very onerous on staff to review our delegate selection plans, having written 2 of those plans myself for the state of North Carolina. But a lot of work goes into evaluating those delegate selection plans, and not so much in terms of a formal review process on some sort of regular schedule of our state parties and how they operate. It's something that we do in the Young Democrats of America, having been the credentials chair for that body previously, and I think it's probably a best practice for us as well to do the same for the 57 state parties.
We are at 20 minutes. We have 1:10 left. David Atkins of California.
Yes, briefly, thank you. I want to speak in favor of the resolution and second Ms. Vickers and Mr. Hughes here. I was almost to the point of doing a point of order around whether whether those amendments were in fact out of order. But in any case, yeah, I think, and with appreciation to what everyone is concerned with and the difficulties involved, I do think that given that our leadership is invested in encouraging strong state parties, and that is a culture change that is happening throughout the DNC to reorient toward building state parties, that perhaps the historic culture of this committee also might need to look at being more proactive in assisting our state parties to have processes that encourage participation and that create a more functional state party apparatus rather than sort of letting everyone do their own thing and hoping for the best. So I do hope that these next elections will take place in a good manner, but both here and with regard to the other 57 state parties, I think there's a more active role for both RBC and potentially credentials to take in assisting for better processes. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, I'm sorry, there was confusion. I didn't know if your tent never went down or if you put it back up.
Well, my call earlier was about the point of inquiry. It wasn't about the point that I raised my flag for initially. So that was it. Would it be possible to just scroll real quick to the section about the requirements for the other election? Because regarding that, I might want to have a concern, and I may want to suggest an amendment here. The Part A, compiling a list of each SDEC member most current contact, okay, making that available 14 days before notice of the next SDEC meeting. I definitely agree with that. My concern here is, as somebody who's been through some situations before, is what happens if that does not get done, and who is in charge of making sure that that is done properly? And my question is, would it not be would Mr. Hughes, my good friend from the great state of North Carolina, have any objection to a thought, or was there any thought about installing in there a credentials committee that is responsible for making sure that is done?
Mr. Hughes?
I'll admit I did not think of that. But I don't see any potential issue with having some sort of body or group that's agreeable to both the challengers and the challenged in making sure that that additional layer of process is fair. Mm-hmm. I think it would be.
Yeah, I just don't want to get into. I just don't want to get into a situation where we end up 13 days before the election, and then everyone's like, "Well, that wasn't done," so you know.
Just a point of order. Is our charge to resolve the appeal with the conditions set forth in the resolution, and it's a mandate by if adopted by the committee as a whole, it would be adopted and a mandate to the party to follow those rules, and therefore.
Yep. Yeah. No. And that's kind of where I was going to go in this regard. Ultimately, what happens is if they don't follow those rules, they end up back here. We're trying to provide those parameters in terms of giving them the best practices to follow associated with that. And I think both of us will probably look to play more of a role in terms of when they do the election and stuff like that in terms of the DNC, like we spelled out here. But I would say I think leaving it alone makes most sense because it provides the parameters and it's saying this is the rules to follow. Follow the rules.
Our time has expired for discussion, and I will now call for a vote on the resolution to dispose of the pending challenge. Those members in favor of adopting the resolution, please, we're just going to do a hand vote.
Clarification on what we're voting on?
The resolution as presented.
As presented.
Which was the motion from Matt Hughes, the resolution that was the motion by Mr. Hughes of North Carolina. All those in favor, please say, raise your hand and signify by saying A.
A.
That's everybody. All those opposed?
Motion carries.
Any abstentions? In the opinion of the co-chairs, this motion has passed, and the as presented in the resolution before us, and will be presented to the full DNC for adoption.
Thank you all, to everybody on the Credentials Committee, your thoughtful attention and consideration of this matter. I appreciate your commitment to this committee and to our party. The recommendation of the Credentials Committee on how this challenge will be resolved will be submitted to the full Democratic National Committee as a part of the report this committee tomorrow during the general session. Thank you again to my co-chair, the DNC staff, our parliamentarian, our council, Andy, and our technical support team. And thank you to all of you for your service to this committee. Can we wait? Can we stay quiet until we finish up? Can you let us finish? Thank you again to our co-chair, the DNC staff, our parliamentarian, our council, Andy, and our technical support team. And thank you to all of you for putting in the effort and putting in the time for this. I know it's a lot of time and a lot of commitment. You know, thank you for your work, and thank you for being a good Democrat. That concludes our agenda for today's Credentials Committee. Without objection, this meeting is adjourned.